so happy to have you on the podcast. Hey, Tamu.
Hey, Ebony, I am absolutely delighted to be here with you. I'm a huge fan of who you are as a person, so it's really lovely to be here with you today.
Thank you. I receive that. I always kick these podcasts off with a question, which is, what is sacrosanct to you in your life?
Right now, what is sacrosanct to me in my life is my spiritual practice. Um, and it varies, but usually it is something that involves, well, it's an integrated piece. It's something that involves movement, sitting in this pink contemplation chair, listening to spirit. It involves prayer. It involves poetry. It involves romancing the shizzle out of myself and reminding myself to do that. And it's, not major things. It's like things like buying myself flowers and arranging my home so I see things that I find beautiful all the time, and keeping myself grounded. Not in a, quite often people think about grounding as boring or dank and heavy, but I need to keep myself grounded because I love the whole transcendence piece. And in order for my transcendence to be, when you say sacrosanct, I think of the word holy. In order for my transcendence to be holy, I need to be rooted and grounded. And I could say to a lesser or greater degree, my whole life is my spiritual practice, but actually making sure that I'm leading my life with my spiritual practice is what, a sacrosanct life is all about for me right now, especially as somebody who put doing at the forefront of everything. This feels really special.
I love that, and I love it for so many reasons, because in some ways we've had a kind of parallel journey in that way of um, believing that useful, productive, successful society, like in order to be an adult, in order to survive, in order to put a roof over our heads, in order to, do life how you're supposed to, one must be useful and kind of mine ourselves of all productivity and like be this machine, or like frack ourselves for the worth and the goodness, and that was all doing based. And I've seen both of us kind of go on this journey of softening, of leaning into our femininity and those things that you just called sacrosanct, like beauty and time and space, and all of that.
Mm.
And so I'm curious when I hear you say that, you said your whole life is that now. Like, how? Because I will
I'd
know
love to
people.
say I sat here one day but it came from last year.
Yeah.
I lay down in bed and I thought I was going to die. And I thought, I remember this, but what is this? And then I broke my tooth because I'd been clenching my jaw so hard at night. And I was waking up feeling battered, like I hadn't rested at all.
Yeah.
And then I joined the dots and I was like, oh, that, when I thought I was going to die, me bracing at night. So the thinking I was going to die was a panic attack. I hadn't had one in ages. The clenching and the bracing, waking up feeling more exhausted than when I'd gone to sleep, was because I was carrying so much anxiety, excuse me, because I was on the brink of burnout. So I'd love to say it was some really beautiful epiphany, but unfortunately, and that's just how I roll, mine tends to come from almost hitting what for me is a variation of rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was working in a way that was that I was capable
Mm.
of doing, but it was beyond my capacity. And when I go beyond my capacity and I'm in that really dysregulated survival state, my automatic response is to go into savior mode.
Yeah.
So I was carrying a lot of responsibility that wasn't mine to carry. not necessarily, so I'm talking about in my work, not necessarily like directly inside the coaching relationship, but I was taking it to bed with me. I was taking it around my life with me.
Yeah.
And I had fallen into the trap of believing that I was totally responsible for my clients' results rather than remembering that it's a partnership. And I was working harder than some of my clients were. And it ended up with me almost at burnout. And I reflected back and I was like, oh, this is how I lived my life as a social worker.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't in that environment, your name could end up in the newspaper because of a baby P type situation.
Yeah.
And I remembered, and I went to Ghana for Christmas. And whilst I was there, I remembered that my best life, my best work comes from satisfaction, enjoyment, and play. And putting my spiritual practice, my personal practice in the center of everything I do enables me to have enough capacity to hold it all. And then I can be boundaried in a manner that's really healthy, holy, and like treating myself with reverence. So that's where it came from.
Thank you for sharing that. And I had a very similar, I've had a very multiple similar experiences over the last 2 years where I kept hitting a wall. It wasn't a rock bottom, it was a ceiling.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like,
Yes.
I know what rock bottom feels like. And this was harder to handle because I'm like, I'm being me, I'm showing up, I'm living in my values. Like, it's not that I don't, there's nothing in my life I hate. Like, what is happening here?
Yes.
Feeling I was hitting was you're still carrying too much responsibility for stuff that isn't yours. You are still having edges of savior syndrome. You are still like going beyond your remit and going, don't worry, it's not in my remit, but I'll figure it out. Hang on. And then running around being like, I'll just learn this whole book on the thing that my client needs, right? Rather than going,
Ebony.
here you go, right? What else? Like, there was just so many things. And then I was like, oh, I want to have a relationship as well as a business, and I would like to, also have time, like, and then understanding, like, okay, I pull a relationship in, like, cool, I can do business, I can do relationship, this is nice. I've forgotten who the fuck I am, and there's no space for me. And what about the just staring out the window time? Because in my head, I don't think that's useful or valuable. But actually, if I don't have the I'm a pussycat mermaid, lie on the beach, stare out the window time, none of the other shit works because I'm not integrating. Like, actually, my magic is in the synthesis, the piece that happens when it looks like I'm lying in the sun doing shit. I'm actually like having this magic moment. So yes.
My goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you, because rock bottom or
Mm,
close to, as I said, like close to was what I knew.
mm,
But what I understand
mm,
is exactly what you said,
mm.
because I kept feeling like I'm growing. I felt like the beanstalk in Jack and the Beanstalk, but I
Yeah.
wasn't going where I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And because of that ceiling, I was growing in on myself.
Yeah.
And that's painful.
Yeah. And like, I try and keep my eyes on my own man. I know that I flourish when I'm not looking outward, when I'm not comparing myself, when I'm not, but I also love to celebrate my peers, my friends, the other people. And so I keep an eye out so that I can be like, this thing you're doing so cool. But then it's like, it's a dangerous edge for me. And I watch them getting, my perception is they are scaling or getting bigger or doing more, and there's growth. And this real realization that I am not a sunflower, I am a tomato. That's so going to end up getting cut, but like being a clip. But I'm a tomato. You know how they like grow out,
Yeah,
like just more
yeah,
and more, and they proliferate, but
yeah,
into lots of pots rather than going up. This works so much better for me to have breadth and depth and to grow down and out than to
yeah.
grow tall. Like, growing tall just hurts me. I just keep like getting too skinny a stalk and snapping.
You know what? I'm so sorry. The door has just gone. Yeah, I've
Go
got a
on.
delivery.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that about the tomato and growing outward.
Yeah.
And I talk about mine like being a plume of smoke, but going downwards instead of upwards. And
Mm.
my thing is, you know, uh, a little bit insular. It's all about me. Comparison with other people
Mm.
is not as much of an issue for me. My thing is, I have so much inside here,
Yeah.
so much I want to do. I have a very clear vision of who I'm supposed to be, but that vision and my capacity are two totally different things at the moment.
Mm.
And what I've recently found out about ADHD, people with ADHD,
Mm.
is the tendency for all or nothing thinking, binary thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like if I can't do it all at once, then I'm not doing anything. Then I go into freeze and I'm in my freeze response. And due to, a lot of conditioning we all experience, I start shaming and blaming myself, which then makes me crash down. Next thing I know, I'm shut down. I'm in my, shut down dorsal nervous system, unable to do anything, and then trying to yank myself out with fight or flight, which then creates these boom and bust cycles.
Mm.
And I go through that fighting, and then I remember if I drop down below it all, I find flow,
Yeah.
because what I'm trying to do is take really logical steps. I said something in a newsletter a while back where I said, God said something along the lines of, I can't answer that question because you're seeking linear answers for non-linear questions.
Mm.
And then when I remember that, like my life doesn't need to make sense to me or other people. I know that when I'm in that trust, it's not necessarily a surrender, but when I'm in that trust, the actions, everything comes from that deep place of trust,
Yeah.
and I'm able to create an experience more than my logical mind could ever fathom.
That my like as a manifesting generator, like it's so, yeah, I know, it's so, just see them now, it's so like it's such a rewarding piece to accept that time is not a linear experience for us. And the more I try and make it so, the more I try and deliver on a timeline in Earth time for other people. We were talking about this a little bit before we came on, before we could press record. But the more I try and do it for other people in a straight line, the more I lose myself and the less capable of productivity I am. And the more I'm like in joy and magnetism and following my sacral response and just doing shit that lights me up and bouncing from one thing to the next, the more I get to the end of the week and I'm like, oh, all the things happen. I mean, I have no idea how, but they all happen. Some
Yeah,
of them happened at 10 o'clock at night, some happened at 4 o'clock in the morning, some happened at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but
yeah.
they happened. And if I'm like, I will be at my desk from 9 to, like, no.
It's like my whole body system and energetic body system slams the brakes, and
Yeah.
then I'm accelerating and braking simultaneously and wondering what on
Yes.
earth is going on.
And killing the engine, right? Like literally killing the sacral. Because, and I had an experience of this years ago. I started investigating my thyroid because I was like, why can I not lose weight? Why is this, I'm doing all the things. And we started investigating, and I basically found that I had been doing the equivalent of pressing full on the gas and the accelerator at the same time. I have no idea what that beeping is, and it's probably me. Okay. Anyway, so when I now look at um my human design and I look at things like I have an open root and I'm a
Me
manifesting
too.
generator, I just shouldn't be exercising in that way, right? Like I shouldn't be jumping on hard exercise in the morning. I should be waking up slowly and allowing my root and going with cycles, and just like you, finding those routines and rituals that allow me to tap into devotion rather than discipline. My whole life has changed, and the energy is just so different, because at our core, manifesting generators are feminine beings, right? Like we need to waft like smoke rather than like
Literally,
go up steps,
literally,
Yeah.
literally that. And it's so interesting you say that, because when I was in the throes of being addicted to, like, actively in addictive phase of toxic productivity, I am in recovery now, the way I was suppressing and denying my feminine, because everything that was revered, celebrated, and all that about me was that power to push through, to get things done, to deny my reality in service of being productive, hoping that I get some scraps of validation from the people around me, which was never satisfactory, because it's like having Haribo when you need like a full banquet, never mind 3-course meal. And something had to give. And
Yeah.
I refused. I didn't know about any of this stuff at that point in time.
Yeah.
Something had to give. And I knew that wasn't going to be me.
I'm
Point
glad
blank,
you knew
period.
that. Like, I did not know that. And I also, like, I had classic, like, this won't burn out. I'll just keep going. Like, I'm just a cart horse. I'll just keep going. And like, even if I do burn out completely, I won't tell anyone and I won't ask for help, because at some point I'll regenerate. Age has been fantastic for me, because I just do not regenerate in the same way.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of me that's had to really notice what is happening here. You know, like, if I think about now how I spent my 20s, how I lived, what I did to this body, I feel remorse, actually. And I still have days where I don't want to go for a walk or move my body or stretch. And then I remember that I'm mortal and that I really need to do these things. You know, I really need to drink water, and, you know, just those little, and it's all the little things that keep my creativity, my insight, my joy, the energy that I give willingly to others alive. And if I'm not doing those things, then I become a shell of myself.
Because those things aren't little, they're fundamental.
Yeah, I mean, they're fundamental, and some of them are little, and they're so little I kind of go, well, it's not, it's so little, it doesn't really matter. And like, one of these little things that I do, right, it's a little luxury. I go and get my nails done. Now, if I don't do that, if I'm like, it's too much, it's too expensive, you went last week, you can't afford the time, you know, all of that stuff, I become brittle, and there's no joy in me anymore. Whereas when I go and make myself, even though I don't really want to and can't see the benefit, and I go and sit in the chair and I have that, like, that the kind of chatter with women, which is like monkeys, you know, where it's kind of tending to one another, and it's not really about anything, particularly here, because I'm in Spain and the women I'm talking to are mostly Brazilian and they're talking Portuguese, so there's no commonality except for this, like, buzzing that we do around one another, and kind of pointing at colors and laughing about the different shapes and, you know, all of that stuff. My phone starts pinging and I'm making money because the energy is literally shifted.
Hello.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I'm going to come back to it. It might sound like semantics, but I am so passionate about us owning the things that a culture of capitalism makes us disown or make small.
Yeah.
And we will call that small because on the surface, the gap that is created when we don't meet that need looks small. And it's just something we can very easily skip over. But when you look down the gap, it's very deep.
Yes.
So you're saying that I hadn't got my nails done for I stopped doing my nails because I was recommended that I'm having some treatment with a Chinese herbalist. And because I've got stuff going on with my liver, she advised me to stop doing my nails for 6 months. And as soon as it passed, I was right back in that nail shop, because when I do my nails, it makes me feel happy. And when I walked in, the lady said, "Oh, lady who do bright color." I said, "Yes, I'm back because I always get a bright color, because when I look down and I see a bright color on my fingers, really complementing my dark skin, it makes me feel happy. Rain, shine, whatever, it makes me feel happy, because I look at this, it's the way I've tended to myself, it's the way I've looked after myself." And somebody who survived toxic productivity with emotional and physical neglect, for
Yeah.
me to look after myself in this way feels like a radical act of love. And I will make sure that I create, when I talk to my clients and prospective clients about creating work that serves you too. When I'm talking about creating work that serves me too, and I'm talking about wanting to make what I call big money, lots of people automatically think, ew, because they're thinking about, you know, late stage capitalists or people whose branding is about money first and being a multi seven figure and all of that. And I'm like, that's all good for them. And will I make multi seven figures? Who knows? Probably. But in the meantime, when I'm saying to you big money, I'm talking about making sure I've got money to go and get my nails done every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
because that makes me feel good and happy and sexy. When I feel good and happy and sexy, my service is so much more powerful. And like you, I'm leaving that nail shop with a Stripe notification or two.
Mm.
Yum.
Yum. Yeah. And it is like, I love this analogy because on the surface, it looks like that gap is small, right? And it's, I had stopped doing it. I had stopped doing it. And I am fortunate enough to have a man in my life who is just like, go get them, like, don't even look at me until you have them done. And on the surface, that can look like he's being like, oh, I want to see you looking a certain way.
Yeah.
It's so not, because when I come back in and I'm all like a bouncy puppy and I'm like showing them, I'm like, look what I chose. That's what he wants from me. He
The
doesn't.
energy.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah, love that. Love
Mm.
that. Yeah,
It's,
I'm with it.
yeah, I love this idea of it being really deep, and I think that that's really helpful for people when they are looking for their own things, because I think and one of the things I'd say with my clients is, let's find these things for you. They may not be the same as mine, but you will have things. You will have activities, you will have experiences. You know, one of mine, very smell. I have a lot of sensory stuff, which is very difficult for me. I find noise unbearable, particularly when I'm not in control of it.
Mhm.
And smell, again, is something that is a big deal in my life. And so I asked for Christmas for my family a year's supply of incense. And I've never seen so much incense in my life, and really, really good ones. So many flavors and colors and all sorts. And every single day in my house starts with me going to my altar and lighting an incense, sitting and smelling and feeling like I am surrounded by beauty, because beauty has a smell.
Woman, you're speaking to my soul. I used to have a program. I've still got the program. I've wrapped it up for now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Sovereign,
Mm.
and one of the units in Sovereign is about cherishing yourself.
Mm.
And it's always fascinating to me that the vast majority of the women don't have a relationship with the word cherish or cherishing themselves. Something that's also important for me to acknowledge is that it's a European word,
Yeah.
and somebody who comes from an Eastern European background pointed out that there's no correlating word to the word cherish in her language. So that was something that was really noteworthy. And the word cherish means a lot to me because my mum's middle name is a Yoruba name, Morenike, and it means I have someone to cherish. So that name, Cherish, is something that's always in my family, and that's my daughter's middle name as well. And so that word cherish is very dear to me, and I'm somebody that likes cherishing touch, and I like cherishing self-touch. And the amount of women who express that they didn't realize they could cherish themselves.
Mm.
So mothers think about themselves cherishing their children, perhaps. Partners, heterosexual, because my same-sex couples, it's a different game altogether. It's a great game. Like, I wish I was attracted to women because that seems to be where it's at. But women in heterosexual relationships think that they can cherish their partner. And that also links to sensuality. So it's something they give away. It's not something for themselves.
That's so
So
interesting.
yeah. So when you talk about incense,
Yeah.
incense is part of the way I cherish myself.
Mm.
Smell, aroma is very, very important
Yeah.
in that regard. And it's just so interesting to me that women, generally speaking, way more than men, are conditioned for anything that is tender to be something that is an act of service for someone else.
The reason I find this particularly interesting, one of the first big life-changing retreats or experiences that I went on was with Mastin Kip in Bali a long time ago. I say a long time ago, like it keeps getting longer. And there's a group, there were like 40 women, and he's done multiple retreats, and this retreat that a group of us stayed in touch and still speak. Like some of my best friends I speak to pretty much every day were on that experience. Beautiful. And it pulled into the heart, and it was very much about relationships, and it was he was and had really been exploring Alison Armstrong's work and been looking at polarity, and that was kind of my journey with polarity. And one of the things he said is that the masculine needs to be respected and the feminine needs to be cherished. And at the time, I had a visceral response because I was so in my masculine. I was like, I have no desire to be cherished. Respect me, motherfucker. Like I was like, who wants to be cherished? Like,
ew.
The whole thing made me feel quite sick, and I really didn't want it. And so whenever I hear the word cherish now, it's such an anchor for me to notice a journey.
Yeah.
I respect the masculine parts of myself and I can bring them out, but I don't need to be respected. I don't have that need. I do have a need to be cherished. I do have to be to be held in that tender way. And I think it's really interesting to notice the response to that word, right? And to any word, really. I think it's
it's interesting because I am very good at that. Like previously, when I was in the do productive, cherish for me felt like pity, like, ew, get away from me. I'm very good at cherishing myself. My growth edge is allowing myself to be cherished by others. And my first experience of that is with my friend, Kerry Jarvis. We were having it was an off the cuff conversation, and she said something, I've heard this before, but I wasn't ready to receive. And she said, something along the lines of, oh my goodness, that sounds like it must have been so difficult. I want to honor you. Something along those lines. And I just melted. I was like, what the fuck? Yes, because that was the first time I was able to receive it. And then I was in a relationship with a man that was very, very good at cherishing me, not very good at emotional intimacy, but very good at cherishing me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can feel myself resisting this so much for reasons that aren't my own, because of what I'd seen in relationships around me, because of what I'd seen as a child growing up. There was no cherishing going on in my community between men and women. It was very much about survival, doing things, getting things done. And frankly, women couldn't rely on men. So for me to allow you to cherish my heart, to cherish my soul, that was a really big thing. And so now my growth edge, I'm not in a romantic relationship, but my growth edge is allowing my friends to cherish me, to allow my family to cherish me, to allow my mum to cherish me. And I'm really feeling like a woman. Imagine I'm 46 nearly, saying like, I'm really feeling, I never really felt like a woman before.
I love this conversation. I love that often people may very well look at us and not see the layers and the subtlety of the work. And still people think that the work is moving boulders, right? And it's chopping wood, it's pouring water. It's all these little things, noticing your relationship to a word, to context. I'm sitting here thinking about how fortunate I am to have had this morning in my WhatsApps, my girlfriends have all cherished me, and they've all started with messages that have been like, I've really missed you. Message me. I just give me one of those waffly messages. I want to hear your voice. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so beautiful. And if I look back at my relationships with men, anytime I've ever said, I miss you, I have felt as though I was putting something on them that they didn't want.
Hello.
And I'm now in a situation where I say, I miss you, I know that that is received as longing, but the good sort, like yearning and longing for me come along with cherishing.
Yeah.
And it's been a
It's
real
almost like
blessing.
savoring in advance.
And that I miss you isn't like, and you should feel bad for not being around, right? Like that's only with a man who can't hold a boundary, or the masculine when it can't hold a boundary. Whereas, you know, the fact that I'm really allowed to show up with my entire longing and that's met is sexy as hell.
Hello.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was to truly be a woman, because it means feeling these feelings and articulating them and communicating them, not for manipulation, not to move a boulder, but because it's expression. It's
Hold up. Wait a minute. Not for manipulation, not for moving a boulder. I'm repeating that because I really want people to like drink that in and see where it lands, especially people that have learnt to earn their worth with people pleasing, because they believe they're being really nice, but what they are doing is manipulating to move a boulder.
Yeah.
Oh, Ebony.
It's a totally different experience when you can own your own expression. When you're expressing, you remember when you're like 5 or 6 and you've got a beautiful new skirt and it frills, and you're just turning around in it, right? And it isn't for anybody else. You're just like, look at how it feels. Look at the colours flapping in the wind, right? That is expression for expression's sake. And then there's a moment where the male gaze catches it. And we then notice we notice our effect, and then we start to use it. And that's a totally different thing. And I'm not saying never do that. Sometimes it's appropriate, but have the discernment and the ability to know which one you're doing.
And may we also add, we also notice the female gaze of the person who is looking at you like, who the heck do you think you are? Because they don't believe they are entitled to twirl around and have fun in their skirt.
Yeah, and
I would say for me,
like, no one bought me a skirt like that, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
And in my experience, I was way more impacted by the female judgment and envy. And I'm saying envy because envy is when you want the characteristics somebody else has, and the female envy as opposed to the male gaze. But that's also to do with growing up and seeing men not being loving and caring. I just always grew up thinking, what am apart from making children, what are men for? So the male gaze has never been as much as of a thing for me as the interrelationships between women.
I find that fascinating, and actually I kind of want to carry this on in the after hours bit,
Cool.
because there's a piece around that is fascinating for me that I'm still really unpacking, and I think it's because I had a strong relationship with my dad. So we're going to pick this up if that's all right.
Absolutely.
If people want to come find out more, come listen to your podcast, see what you're up to, all of those things, where are the best places for them to come hang out?
The best places are to find me on Instagram at live360, LIVETHREESIXTY, and head over to the link in my bio, subscribe to my mailing list. And Instagram is usually the place I share things, but I am trying to be much better at sharing things with my email subscribers first. So do head over there. And also, I've revamped my Substack where I'm exploring the relationship between women and working too much. The Substack is called Women Who Work Too Much, and I'm sharing my musings and meditations and stuff over there. And there's a link to my Substack also in my Instagram profile.
Fantastic. Well, I will make sure that all of those links are very easily clickable from the show
Thank
notes.
you, thank
And
you,
it
thank
has
you.
been a real pleasure to have this conversation.
Thank
And
you
I'm
so
excited
much.
to carry it on as well.
Indeed. Thank you.